Many Gothic cathedrals were among the tallest buildings in the world up until the 1800s. Many Gothic cathedrals were among. What does among mean? Among means within, okay? Or between. The tallest buildings in the world up until, that means until the 1800s, all right? Impressive, huh? What does that mean, impressive? Impressive means it has the quality so that you can admire it, all right? It's great in an aspect. Gothic artists also cared little about order or proportion. Gothic artists also cared little about order. What is order? Order is a number of things put in, arranged by a certain rule, okay? Or the state that things are put in the correct places, all right? Order or proportion. What does that mean, proportion? Proportion is the relation between amounts, okay? So like say if this is a wall, right? If the length of it is 6 and the height of it is 4, this is the proportion, okay? 6 to 4, okay? So it has rules. Proportion. Let's move on.
So how do Gothic and Renaissance architecture differ? The major way is in how the architects viewed the designs of the buildings. I should mention that the Italians never really embraced Gothic architecture. It was more of a Northern European style. In fact, Italy had fewer Gothic buildings than any other Western European country. On the contrary, Italian architects historically designed buildings like their Roman ancestors had. Unlike Gothic architects, they often based their designs on precision and order. This was much like the Romans and ancient Greeks had done. So you could say that the Italian architects weren't breaking away from the Gothic style, since they had never really embraced it in the first place. It's more correct, I suppose, to say that they developed their own style based on Roman architecture.
Okay. What is this part about? So how do Gothic and Renaissance architecture differ? Okay. What did it say? Italians never really embraced Gothic architecture. They never accepted it. All right. It was Northern European style, not for Italy. All right. And Italians historically designed buildings like their Roman ancestors, okay, based on precision and order, okay. So you can't say the Italian architects were breaking away from the Gothic style because they never had that style. Rather, they developed their own style based on the Roman architecture. How do Gothic and Renaissance architecture differ? What does that mean, differ? Differ means different, being different. The major way is in how the architects viewed the designs of the buildings. The major way, what does major mean? Major means more important than others in a group or a situation. The major way is in how the architects, what's an architect? Architect is a person who designs buildings. Viewed the designs of the buildings. View, what does it mean? Looked at or thought of it, okay? I should mention that the Italians never really embraced Gothic architecture. Never really embraced. What does that mean, embrace? Embrace means to hold something tightly with your hand. If you embrace an idea, you accept it and support it, all right? Or believe in it, okay? Embraced Gothic architecture. It was more of a Northern European style. In fact, what does that mean, in fact? If you say in fact, you're going to say something different from what you have just said. Italy had fewer Gothic buildings than any other Western European country. On the contrary, what does that mean? If you say on the contrary, you're going to say, you're going to emphasize that something is true, which is the opposite from what you have just said. Italian architects historically designed buildings like their Roman ancestors had. Italian architects historically designed buildings like their Roman ancestors. What's an ancestor? Ancestor. Your ancestors are the people from whom you have descended, all right? Like your great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, okay? Unlike Gothic architects, they often based their designs on precision and order. They often based their designs on precision and order. What does base mean? If you base A on B, A develops from B. Base A on B. Okay? You develop A from B. Based their designs on precision. What does that mean, precision? Precision is being exact. This was much like the Romans and ancient Greeks had done. So you could say that the Italian architects weren't breaking away from the Gothic style since they had never really embraced it in the first place. It's more correct, I suppose, to say that they developed their own style based on Roman architecture. It's more correct, I suppose. What does suppose mean? Suppose means to think that something is probably true, okay? They developed their own style. What does develop mean? Develop means to improve, okay? Their own style based on Roman architecture. Let's go to the next part.
Roman architecture stressed mathematical precision. Everything in a Roman building was purposely designed and planned. Proportion was important, and the building itself had to be aesthetically pleasing. From the Romans, Italian Renaissance architects learned about symmetry. For example, the facade or front of an Italian Renaissance building had to be symmetrical on both sides. Most Italian Renaissance buildings were shaped like squares and had additions that were symmetrical and in proportion. Gothic buildings, meanwhile, were narrower, higher, and more rectangular. Italian Renaissance architects also imitated the Roman usage of columns, domes, and semicircular arches and vaults. The walls and ceilings in the building's interiors were typically decorated with frescoes. Many of the interior and exterior details were actually copied directly from Roman examples.
Okay, what is this part about? This part is about the features of Roman architecture, okay? They stressed mathematical precision. Proportion was important, okay? And one of the features is symmetry, all right? Renaissance buildings were shaped like squares, while Gothic buildings were narrower, higher, and more rectangular. All right. And Italian Renaissance architects imitated the Roman usage of columns, domes, and semicircular arches and vaults. Okay. And then The interior was decorated with frescoes, and the details were copied directly from Roman examples. That's the feature of the Roman architectures. Roman architecture stressed mathematical precision. Stress, what does that mean, stress? Stress means to emphasize, okay? To say that something is particularly true or important, okay? Mathematical, what does that mean? Mathematical means related to numbers or the calculation. Everything in a Roman building was purposely designed and planned. Was purposely. What does that mean, purposely? Purposely means intentionally. You understand? You do it on purpose. You do it by planning it before. Designed and planned. Proportion was important, and the building itself had to be aesthetically pleasing. Aesthetically, what does that mean? Aesthetical means relating to beauty, okay? Aesthetically pleasing. What does that mean? Pleasing. Please. If you please someone, you make them happy or satisfied. From the Romans, Italian Renaissance architects learned about symmetry. Symmetry, what is that? Symmetry is the quality of being symmetric, symmetrical. Okay, what does that mean, symmetrical? It means having two halves which look exactly the same, except that they have an image, a mirror image of the other. Do you understand? Symmetrical means having two halves looking exactly the same, except that they are the mirror image of the other. Do you understand? For example, the facade or front of an Italian Renaissance building had to be symmetrical on both sides. For example, the facade. Facade means the face. Okay? It's French. Facade. The front wall is the facade, alright? Of an Italian Renaissance building had to be symmetrical on both sides. The front wall has to be symmetrical. Let me explain you with a picture. So the front wall has to be symmetrical. That means like this, not like this. Symmetrical means having two halves which look exactly the same as a mirror image. And this is not the same. This is round and this is triangular. You understand what I'm saying? Most Italian Renaissance buildings were shaped like squares and had additions that were symmetrical and in proportion. Shaped like squares. What's a square? Square is a shape that has four equal sides and all four corners are right angles, which means 90 degrees angles.